Welcome to Cycling Fashion Week, the only global podcast purely focused on cycling style, fashion, fits, lifestyle, and culture. I am your host, Alex, joined this week by an almost full crew. We have Warren, we have Tony, we have Italian Alex. We are missing Skyler, who is out at Canadian Nationals, I believe. She is a racer, as you know. So she is not podcasting, but thankfully you've got the other four out here, podcasting, giving you the content. Guys, how are you doing this week?
I'm doing well. I want to say I saw Skyler had a little delay on her team bike, which I think was a factor 02.
I think so.
I finally saw it. She finally got it. She got it fitted. It looks beautiful. I think Factor's a great carbon manufacturer. But one issue I realized, I guess, with having a team bike is she's not allowed to cut the steer tube, because theoretically she may give it back if she doesn't buy it off them or whatever, right? Because it's a loaner at this moment. So she's got it slammed, of course. She's got a great fit. It's very racy, but she has a little chimney because until she decides whether she wants to buy it or not, I guess, they want to have that option if they resell it to not cut it down to that slam size. So that's a bit of a disappointment. Getting a team bike is amazing, high quality Di2 Factor bike, but it's not worth it if you can't cut the steer tube.
Does she have to ride it, or can she ride something else?
She has to ride it.
Yeah.
Because I would drop off the team.
She also has a Factor TT bike, I believe, as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah, she has to.
So she's not here, but let's just shout out the Cyclery Ottawa for her, because I know she loves them and they've done well for her and she's been racing well. But I'm just saying, it's like a free bike to ride for the season's amazing, especially the quality she's getting. But it's not worth it if you can't cut the steer tube. Then you look like Warren.
Hey, man. 39.
Okay, special episode this week. We are releasing an interview that we did a little while ago with the Austrian brand Brilliant Unicorn. You might know them as BBUC. We spoke to Daniel, Marvin, and Christian. They joined us from Vienna to talk about the brand, talk about their story. I wasn't on the interview, but Italian Alex, Warren, and Skyler.
No, just the two of us.
No, it was Tony. Oh, it was just the two of you.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Tony's been busy being a dad.
Mm-hmm.
Did the interview, and we have that later on the podcast today. Very interesting brand. Guys, I think speaking of brands that we talked about on the podcast, last episode in our segment talking about news releases, we gave our initial thoughts on the Central Park Cycling Club jersey by the New York City brand Rubber and Road. And little did we know that the day after we released the podcast, there were some very interesting stories about Rubber and Road that were blowing up on Reddit, and our listeners, being the astute observers of the cycling kit scene and the cycling kit market that they are, and especially our New York-based listeners, got in touch with us, asked us to weigh in, told us all the interesting stories. And I think we would be remiss if we didn't bring it up. And I'm just going to speak for myself. Maybe you guys can weigh in if you want. But look, from my perspective, this is interesting, but that's an issue that's kind of internal to the New York cycling scene, which I'm not a part of. This is very much in the inside baseball of New York. And I don't particularly feel a desire to weigh in on this. The stories are what they are. But I think personally, I'm just going to leave it at that.
I think that went about as viral as something can go in the cycling or cycling fashion world. And as far as I'm concerned, the meme accounts kind of covered it.
To get the timeline right on how everything kind of went down, we recorded the episode like a week before all those texts and screenshots surfaced. And had we seen a lot of that material and a lot of the controversy it caused, maybe we wouldn't have leaned into talking about the kit so much and would have just avoided it altogether.
Yeah, I mean, just by virtue of us talking about that jersey on the podcast, not even talking about all that stuff that happened, I got some DMs from one of the owners on LinkedIn, of all places, which, yeah, that's not something I really want happening.
I think there's stuff to say, but I think there's a lot of heat, as we've sort of seen in just DMs and sort of what's going on with the kind of viralness of it. And I think kind of with this level of heat, we'll just lay off it. And like Alex said, let's let the New Yorkers handle their New York business. Us Canadians, we can spread some smoke over there, but we won't add to it. We won't add to this fire.
Okay, this week, we'll do a quick segment on news and releases. Obviously, we've done a podcast more recently. We covered some of the interesting stuff that was out, but there's a few tidbits that came out over the last couple of weeks that we do want to talk about and give our initial thoughts on. The first one, I guess this one's going to be easy. It was a release by Rapha that hit my inbox, and Rapha released the Pro Team Gore-Tex Infinum jersey. So I never actually seen a Gore-Tex jersey before, but given the unstoppable rise of Gorpcore, which I actually think is on the way down now. Maybe Italian Alex can weigh in on that, being the hype beast that he is. But given the inexorable rise of Gorpcore, I think this was probably inevitable. But Rapha released a Gore-Tex Infinum jersey. They describe it as a close-fitting, fully windproof, and water-resistant jersey for high-tempo rides in changing conditions. However, the fabric has less stretch than their regular Pro Team jerseys, so they advise riders to size up on this one. Obviously, Gore-Tex is a little bit stiff, but yeah, pretty interesting Gore-Tex jersey. Curious to hear the noise that makes on, when you're moving as well, because Gore-Tex is actually pretty noisy and can be pretty stiff. It's pretty basic black jersey. There's a Rapha armband, says Rapha in the back. Nothing special about the design, but just the idea of a Gore-Tex jersey. Any thoughts on it, guys? I have some thoughts, but I'll let you go first.
I can't believe it's only $330. And in this day and age, that's cheap for a jersey, especially a Gore-Tex one. Like, expect it to be like $500 with the way, most brands are pricing things these days. But my only real take is, like, as much as I like to rag on the Castelli logo, and I still will, they've got the GABA. That has how many years of like cycling heritage and performance. I would just go for that rather than this personally. I also think just where the lines are and stuff is just kind of ugly.
I don't ride in the rain, so this is anything. It's useless to me. I got a good trainer. Stay inside when it rains. I want to ride in nice weather. I'm not a North England hard man like the Spats guy. So
embarrassed. Shout out.
Yeah. When Gore-Tex comes up, my eyes gloss over and I move on because it's not pertinent to my riding.
Italian Alex, just nothing.
I got nothing. I was just going to say I don't ride in the rain, but Tony already got it.
Well, what I will say, I don't either, but also, like, if I were to go on, say, a really long ride and there was a risk of rain.
Like a bike packing trip?
I don't know what you're talking about, Tony. I would just bring a rain jacket. Like, I'm not going to wear a rainproof jersey all for changing conditions. If it rains, great, then maybe it helps. But if it's sunny, then it's probably really uncomfortable.
Well, that's the thing is, I assume because it's I don't know, maybe I'm being ignorant here, but I'm assuming because it's Gore-Tex, it's probably not very breathable, is it? So
Probably
if
not.
it's probably not, so if it's short sleeve and it's Gore-Tex, you kind of get the worst of both worlds. It's not really protecting you in cold weather.
So that was exactly my take, Alex. And I guess my issue with this piece of kit is that there's a few contradictions with it. So the first one is, Rapha, you go to their website, they say, when weather is bad, it's raining, you need Gore-Tex, so wear this jersey. However, as you say, it's Gore-Tex, so it's not the most breathable thing. Although the high-end Gore-Tex can be a little bit breathable, but I guess the Infinum stuff I don't think is all that breathable. But also your arms are out in the open, getting a ton of rain, so it kind of feels wet, not that comfortable. Now, again, this is Gore-Tex Infinum. It's not Gore-Tex Pro or it's not Gore-Tex. Now, you go on the Rapha website and they say this is for rainy weather. This is for changing weather. Now, if you go to the Gore-Tex website, and I'm not to say that I'm something of a Gore-Tex connoisseur myself, but I'm a skier. I own a bit of Gore-Tex for layering in the winter. And if you go to the Gore-Tex website, it says they give a description of Gore-Tex Infinum. And they say that Gore-Tex Infinum is really something for when you want high performance, but you don't need waterproof. When waterproof isn't a priority and you just want something that blocks the wind, Gore-Tex Infinum is where you got to go. They say our high performance technologies boost performance when waterproof protection isn't a priority. So you can do more and say yes more often. So what I find interesting is the contradiction between the Rapha description which says wear this when it rains, and Gore-Tex, the actual makers of the fabric, that say this is for when you don't really care that much about staying dry in the rain. So I don't know who's right here.
Isn't wind blocking what a gilet is for?
Well, and so
Yes.
shouldn't this just have been a Gore-Tex gilet ultimately? I mean, which raises the question of, do you need a jersey that's made of Gore-Tex? And again, I 100% agree with Tony. If it's raining enough that I would need Gore-Tex, there's no way I'm riding. It's not happening.
Let's be honest. In the summertime, if it is, let's say you're riding and it does rain in a situation where you're only wearing short sleeves, it's probably warm enough that you don't need the insulation and windproof that comes with the Gore-Tex in the first place. I've ridden the rain in the summer more than I would have liked to, and I've never had a problem with my temperature and cooling and trying to stay warm. It's not that. It's just dealing with it and trying to get home as quickly as I can.
Sometimes in the rain, I've noticed, like on really hot days where you get caught in that kind of, it's very humid and it kind of has a blistering storm for like 5 minutes. It's actually quite refreshing. Like if it's like a 35-degree ride and you're just dying. I remember a couple of those I had, and the rain in it was actually like recharged me for the rest of the ride as I was like overheating. So, I mean, if you're in a situation where short sleeves are necessary, you're at a pretty decent temperature that it's like, if it's going to rain, it might be either a bit uncomfortable or even pleasant, depending on sort of like the level of rain. But like usually if you're at the point where the rain is kind of, it's cold enough that the rain is going to really be sort of uncomfortable, you want long sleeves and a jacket in layers anyways.
So maybe this is a product that we don't need.
It's definitely a big L for Rapha. Big L for Rapha.
Oh, definitely an L.
Next release that we wanted to talk about, the German bicycle brand out of Berlin, Standert, came out with their new aluminum frame, the Kreissäge. Is it the Kreissäge RS? I think it is.
Yes.
Kreissäge RS. So fancy marketing, nice glitzy coloring, lots of printing on the bike, custom alloy tube set. Essentially, this is their frame that's designed in Berlin but made in Italy, as their website says. They do a really good job of photographing this thing. The frame is a nice classic frame, medium-sized tubing. I would say it's got a slight slope, but not too much. It doesn't have drop seat stays, which is nice. They picture it in beautiful colors, tan sidewalls. They even have ceramic speed pulley wheels on it. Standert is really the influencer bike, I would say, out there. So I guess you already heard me. That's my take. But I'll let you guys go with the positive takes on Standert because I know you all love it. But I'll come back with a more critical take after.
See, Alex, the thing is, I agree with you 100% that it's marketing. I think I tried to look into it, but it's not like hand welded. Like I'm going to give some Canadian companies, but I know there's a lot out there, like a Mariposa or a Marinoni or something. Like I think it's still like kind of like a factory built aluminum or steel bike, but their marketing just works on me. Like it's just like I'll say it, like I'm a sucker for it. It's like ALD is just expensive Gap, but I see an ALD post ad, I'm always like, I could really use that thing. It's like the same thing. Like I know I can get a better bike, custom fit steel, more personal choices for paint.
You do realize it's 11,000 Canadian dollars, right? And that's before any import duties or anything.
Exactly. And that's what,
not that much, is it?
So it's 7,300 euros is the price.
I'm seeing 5,500 euros.
I'm seeing 4,800.
Is it on Bike Radar? I'm seeing 7,300 euros with Shimano Di2.
Oh, I'm on the Standard website.
Oh, I'm seeing from 5,500.
Oh, maybe if you deck it out.
Yeah, so that's the basic package. No, you're right. Like the cost is exorbitant. You're not probably getting much, especially probably not better. Like it's just talking aluminum, whatever, like a CAD, whatever the CAD 13 or 14 or whatever it's now.
To specify, for 7,300 euros, the model comes with Shimano Ultegra R8100 Di2 group set. That's it. And then what else? That's it. That's the new kind of standard. That's the standard on the Standert. You can also get the Dura-Ace group set. They also offer the option to, like I said, add the oversized pulley wheels from Ceramic Speed, which I assume is extra. But yeah, that's it. So you're getting an aluminum alloy bike for €7,300, which works out to about 11,000 Canadian dollars.
I would never actually buy it, but I'm just saying the marketing works. Like their posts come up, or I don't really follow influencers, but sometimes some of them come up on the Explore or For You page, and I see it and I go, man, that looks good. Like they've done it. Like you're right. It's a total ripoff, like waste of money. There's way better bikes for cheaper, or if they're the same price, like you're going to get custom, you're going to be able to choose your paint color, and you can probably just copy their paint colors, but there's just, the marketing just works.
To me, Standert is like, and they're nice. There's no question. They're beautiful. They're, they've got everything. They've done everything right. But it is the bike that the algorithm suggests for you, if you know what I mean. It's the easy bike to like. And I that for that reason, I don't really see the point. But
I got a lot of things to say based on what you guys go back. First of all, I don't agree that Standert is the influencer bike. Like to a degree, yes. But I'm seeing a lot of factors, even on more and more Pinarellos, which I'm surprised about. But I think Factor is starting to rival Standert on the influencer spectrum personally. Like I'm seeing just as much served to me on Instagram. Maybe a few years ago I'd agree, but I don't necessarily, like, I think yes, it still is.
Did Cannondale fall off? Because they were the influencer bike, and I feel like it's completely gone from the influencer world. Is Cannondale?
Well, I was going to get to that. Also, is Cannondale? I don't know what they're doing over there with their bikes, but like I feel like they're doing everything they can to make me not want to buy any of their bikes. Like my first bike was a CAD 10, and it was a great bike, nice classic shape and design. And then, they kept that through in the CAD 11 and 12. I think it was the 13 when they finally dropped the seat stays and made it look horrible. But I was going to say Standert they're missing an opportunity here to fill that void, because the frame alone, like, the completes are expensive. Even the cheaper end is like €4,600, but the frame set is €1,600, which I think is about $2,300 Canadian. That is what I paid for my custom geometry low frame. Granted, that was 5 years ago, but like custom geometry aluminum frame, but you're just getting a Standert, which I'm sure is fine, but it's I'm just saying they could maybe also create an option that would fill that void of the CAD, because the CAD now just looks terrible in my opinion. Cannondale's ruin it with their bad branding, the bad frame design. It's awful. So Standert, I think, should, whether it's this model or introduce another one that's aluminum, I think they could fill that void, but they're not at the moment.
Like another example, I always shout out my love for Marinoni, but Marinoni steel, custom geometry, your choice of paint, 2150 Canadian. So like right there, like you could fully, like you wouldn't have the Standert logo, but you could fully rip off. You could choose, like I'm looking at one right now that's blazing beige, right? You could just, if you just love the look of that bike, just get a steel custom Marinoni, do their off-white cream with the Marinoni logo in whatever this kind of orange is, and you just have a sort of Standert looking bike.
I mean, we've already established they're very beautiful bikes. Like aesthetically, they're just so pleasing. The geometry is so classic. But what I think we're falling victim of here is that it's so much the bike of the moment. I'd almost be afraid
You're falling victim. I'm not.
Well, okay, I am. Me and
that.
Tony, and to a lesser extent Warren, are all falling victim to the aesthetics of the bike. Really like them whenever I see them. I always turn my head when I see one. They're beautiful bikes. But I feel like, is this the kind of bike that I'm still going to want to ride in like 5 years or less time? Or is it going to have like its Cannondale moment where it just like falls off hard and I'm
everything is fleeting. I think it will go away. And it is, like I said, if Meta was to design an algorithm that wants to make you keep scrolling and gets you addicted to something, as you said, this is very much the bike of the moment's got that kind of Helvetica typeface on it. It's everything that 2023 demands. And yeah, it's gonna go away.
I completely disagree. I think that's a real check mark in the pro column of Standert, is that like this bike will last forever. I mean, you can say the Helvetica, but the Helvetica text, that was American Apparel. There's a documentary about Helvetica that came out in 2006. Like that's a text that's not going away. The colors, you could kind of like, there's some colors of the moment, but like the geometry of the frame, like Italian Alex, your dad recently purchased a reissue of a retro Colnago, and it has such similar lines and classic that like you're not going to look at this even 20 years from now and be like, oh, what an ugly bike. Like it's not that sort of like early Pinarello, not the Pinarello Dogma. There's one that was just awful. And like there's some of the early Cervelos that just like did not hold up. Like I think complete opposite. I think this bike, one advantage was this bike would totally hold up over time.
I agree with Tony on terms of the shape. The colors, I don't agree with. I think they're very trendy, especially in this release. Like what I was going to say when you guys were talking about marketing and like anyone who rides a Standards victim marketing, guys, that's the whole fucking bike industry. Like specialized all marketing. Yeah, they've got tons in R&D, but like anyone who's paying $18,000 for a fucking Athos, like that's pure marketing driving that. You know what I mean? So I don't think you can really. I think it's a little unfair to knock Standard for that. They're just doing it well.
And good for them. I mean, they do a great job of designing bikes and marketing them. And that's to their credit. There's one thing I want to talk about, where the bike is actually made, because Standert is a Berlin-based company. They design everything out of Berlin, but it seems like they produce in Italy. They have a frame builder that's located in northern Italy. They don't mention who the frame builder is, but there's one sentence that kind of caught my attention on their website, and they say, while we develop all our bikes, designs, and geometries in Berlin, a lot of them are built and painted in Italy. When they say a lot of them are built and painted in Italy, when you say a lot of them, that implies that not all of them. So I'm just curious.
That doesn't even necessarily mean half of them. It just means a lot. That could be.
Yeah, so I just like to, if there's some listeners or if the brand wants to get in touch with us and maybe clarify that statement, I'd love to hear it.
Listen, I do like the aesthetics of these bikes. The only thing that really prevents me, well, I don't need a new road bike, but it would be the price that would kind of hold me back. It's really like their steel frames, especially, like you could just say they're all cities, but with much better branding.
Exactly what you said, Warren, which I completely agree with. And it sort of shows in a way, like, I mean, there's always this kind of criticism of things of the moment, especially stuff that feels very like trendy among the youth. But in a way, like we're just being grumpy old men. We have Attack Specialized in Cannondale, but like because they do this like R&D stuff and like show the wind tunnel, it's like they seem more like legit in their manufacturing, and like we still know their stuff's overpriced, but we're kind of like, oh, but they're doing all this, where it's like, yeah, they're just kind of selling you on an idea, and Standard's just not the same idea. They're not selling you on the bullshit speed, save 1 watt stuff. They're kind of selling you on the beauty of it. It's all the sort of the same crap you're buying, right? Like the same marketing sort of ploy. Because in reality, for most people, we could all be buying, entry level aluminum bikes from anyone really for a couple grand.
Except nobody makes them anymore.
I mean, that's true too. That's a problem. You look at that, you're like, Sora 3000, Da Vinci Sora 3000. What the fuck? But it's, we're all kind of sucker to either the fake speed or the aesthetic push of these bikes, because none of us, like, let's face it, none of us really, almost no one I know needs the quality of bike they have. I'm totally just going to sucker into the Standard marketing because I just like beautiful things, regardless if it's ridiculous.
Do you guys see a lot of Standards on the road in Toronto? I think I only know of one person in Montreal that has one, but I haven't really seen them take control of the Canadian market.
There's a few rolling around.
I'll take my CAD 5 over a Standard.
Yeah, but not everybody can find a CAD 5 for $500 on Facebook Marketplace. I would love to get one.
That's the value add. That's the service I provide.
Alex finds you a CAD for a fee.
Well, yeah, I find you a CAD for $500, and you pay me the difference between that and the price of the Standard. That's my fee.
For our next segment, we are excited to welcome the brand Really Brilliant Unicorn, or BBUC, from Vienna, Austria. We have Daniel, Marvin, and Christian from BBUC today, and this is a brand we've been fans of at Cycling Fashion Week for a little while now. Italian Alex, has been rocking their kit recently. It looks great, and we're very excited to have them on the podcast. So Guys, welcome to Cycling Fashion Week.
Yeah,
Hello.
thank you so much.
Hello, thank you.
I think some of our listeners are familiar with you. I don't know if they all would be, so we'll just start kind of at the beginning and bring our listeners back to how your brand started. So how did BBUC come to creation or inception? Because it's a pretty unique name, obviously, when you do the acronym. But yeah, how to get started?
Getting into bikes, moving to Vienna, meeting Marvin at some point, and the hotel. I started like, I don't know, like 13 years ago, something like that. Ride Unicorn, which is like a Sunday group ride with fixed gears. This is a whole play on like not taking it so seriously. One horn, one gear, and like you take it from there. And one day I met Marvin a few years in there, and he was running a hotel called Hotel am Brillantengrund, and also got into bicycles. And like, yeah, this like ended up in like a collaboration in jerseys for the fun of it, and in the end like forming BBUC. Daniel is one of our oldest customers nowadays. He's partner in the business, which is awesome. This is where it all comes from.
Yeah, I mean, we started with a cycling team called Brilliant Unicorn Racing Dream.
Mm-hmm.
That was exactly 10 years ago. Christian wanted to make fun about all these racing teams out there, about the name. So the hotel company's name, we are running the hotel, is called Brilliant. It's a limited company, and Unicorn was the Sunday group ride. So Brilliant Unicorn and Racing Dream. So that's how we started. And then Christian was always designing kits. And people like Daniel said, hey, people who understand colors on bikes, what? And yeah, that's how it started.
That's a really interesting story too, because it sounds like it was like a very natural growth. Like it wasn't just like you guys got together and started a brand from nothing. It all kind of slowly formed together very naturally and organically over time, right? This wasn't something that just came out of the blue.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think this is our philosophy as well. Same with the hotel, same with our people around us, and every pixel and every word that Winnie designs and Daniel composes leads to a kind of organic story. And Daniel was like, hey, come on, get out of the garage here and bring out your albums to the real world. And yeah.
Incredible.
Speaking of the hotel, because I know that it's part of your brand story, it's on the website. It seems pretty tightly connected with BBUC. Can you explain that connection a bit to our listeners?
Well, the hotel is like, so let's say if we would be in London, it's situated in like this kind of Vienna Shoreditch, and we are really tight connected to the creative community.
Mm-hmm.
We all have the creative background from where we come from film academy to photographers. Also, like Christian, his passion to graphic design. That all leads to Brillantengrund at the end. I remember when we were chatting, he was still working in an agency, in an ad agency, and I was like, hey, just imagine you build up a kind of brand, a kind of medium to amplify what we think about cycling, and yeah, here we are having BBUC. But it's born in the hotel because of this connection that Christian was on a ride, it was raining, and he was looking for a shelter, and his mechanic was my mechanic, and he said, there's a new place in the 7th district, we should go there and have a beer and we can park our bikes. And that's how it started.
So you guys knew each other from before, from creative enterprises then? You didn't meet through cycling?
Oh no, we met through cycling. I didn't even know Marvin. Like I was like on the group ride like with a few people. It was raining, and like coincidentally like a good friend of us, Max, who was like Marvin's mechanic and riding with me, said like, yeah, I have an idea where to go, or we can have a coffee. Suddenly we sit at the hotel, and Marvin pops up, and it starts from there.
And he was this kind of weirdo doing some photos of the garage, and I was like, what is he doing here? What was it, 13 years ago?
Yeah,
12 years ago?
13 years ago at least, yeah, something like that. The hotel has a very beautiful courtyard, and it has like a little garage in the back that is like always like, or Marvin like redesigns or like reassembles it for different occasions, from like photography exhibitions to a BBUC shop or hidden store to like, I don't know, Nike or Converse, like pop-ups that are just happening there.
Cool.
Once you come to Vienna and see the hotel, you get the whole idea.
And there's always like a story behind every pixel that Christian does. Like the BBUC, you see the logo, and the UC is actually the horseshoe of the unicorn. And our wave label is actually the entry door of the hotel. Behind every pixel, every design, there is a story that Christian hides, and he doesn't want to tell it. He's just like, if you know, you know. If not, who cares? At least you like it.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, like your brand has a lot of unique touches or like kind of interesting phrases that, at least in North America, you don't necessarily see in a lot of the kits. So, and you have certain phrases that sort of appear often on your kit and your design. So one that I probably the first time I noticed your brand was the outdoor disco. Like a friend of mine bought a pair of socks that just said disco on them, and I was just like, what's it? It's like, what are those about? So we're curious if you could talk a bit more about what does outdoor disco mean to you, or the sport of tomorrow. Like where do these come from?
So the outdoor disco actually started when, before riding, we were partying every night till to the morning, and then as soon we said, okay, we're gonna start racing, means we have to get up early, right, and go for a ride and go a little bit more serious, whatever serious means. By that time, we were not wearing BBUC. We were obviously, like everyone else, wearing brands like Rapha, and it was all these super flashy colors. And it was like, okay, what do we wear for today's dance, right? It's early in the morning. Normally, we are just coming home from the club, and then you go to the Vienna woods and you see the sun flittering through the trees, and you see the pedaling dancing shoes and the disco lights, I mean the sun in this case, plus what do I wear today, and you have your crew dancing all together in the Vienna woods. Then we all started with just tagging outdoor disco, and just if you check out how many outdoor disco tags out there, no one knows that it's from there actually.
I really like that story because I also, before getting kind of heavily focused into cycling, was also someone who spent a lot of my younger years partying. And so I came into cycling, I don't know if it's the same for you guys, but from like a non-athletic background. I was not a runner or like a swimmer. I also had that like very sudden change from like a lifestyle of staying out all night to waking up incredibly early for bike rides. So I love that story and that message because it just kind of resonates with me. And I think it's what draws a lot of customers to BBUC because they probably have similar stories as well.
And of course, all this fun effect, right? It's not riding hard and suffering. It's about dancing together, either alone or with your friends. And then Christian said, yeah, then let's just put disco on the bibs and then put disco on the socks. So that's how we started to like giving the cycling thing a different approach, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think you're the first brand I've heard when talking about cycling to be like, instead of just focusing on the suffering, you're like, no, it's a party. Like everyone else is like, yeah, and don't get me wrong, I love suffering on the bike and stuff, but it's just funny to hear it talked
Absolutely.
about that way.
We as well. We love. I mean, I always suffer if I go with those two guys. I'm always dying if I'm with Daniel and Christian. But yeah.
Yeah, I think like all aspects in cycling are awesome. Like if it's road, gravel, mountain bike, or God knows what, go slow, go fast, go far, go short, whatever suits you. Unfortunately, like the cycling industry is like very narrow-minded, like
Yeah.
only focusing on the sports aspect, which is also very easy to communicate. Like performance, numbers, speed, who wins. This is simply like built into society, and a recipe for success, in our opinion, like it's like just boring. And we see like something that is much better than that. Like you can go to a club and dance together as much as you can dance like riding it as a group. And whoever is like a little stronger than somebody else is just taking the front and like helping other people to smile. And it's like it's just about like disturbing like sports with a smile. This is like kind of the underlying theme of all of this. So we don't call ourselves racing team. We call it racing dream. We call it outdoor disco because, like, yeah, the sun is as much a disco ball as anything else. On the flip side, like, yeah, people only remember disco and not outdoor disco, but like that's okay.
It's interesting you hear to say that because like I think I've been aware of your brand for a couple of years now, and to me it's always stood out as one of the, if not the most unique brand, just the way you brand, both with your design, but even how you talk about it on the website and just in general. So I really appreciate the fact that you guys are doing things differently because, as you say, like a lot of brands sort of just focus more on the sport, which is fine, but it just feels like you're creating more of a brand that's all about I don't know, it's just a little more unique, and it's just nice to hear a bit of a different approach to the thinking behind it, but also still be able to embrace the sports side.
Yeah, it's definitely more about messaging than like putting 3 letters or 4 letters in, I don't know, Helvetica on the jersey. So like we draw most letters ourselves. Daniel is able to put like our visual ideas like into like absolutely beautiful words. Haven't found anybody else doing that. Marvin and I have been looking for that part for a long time. Luckily, he can do that.
I think when people look to buy kit, they look for brands that resonate with them personally. I think that's what drew me and Warren so much to BBUC, is that if you focus so much on the numbers in cycling, I think that it'll just burn you out and make you miserable. And you can never really be happy if you focus on just optimizing everything all the time. But if you focus on the fun aspects of cycling and the social aspects and the unifying components, that whole outdoor disco messaging that really resonates with us allows you to have some longevity in the sport, because you're focusing on the aspects of it that you remember and that make it special and different than any other form of working out, which is all the good social components of it. And I think that's just what we like so much about BBUC and how you guys market your kit. It's more about the social components, having fun on your bike, being with friends, rather than just trying to push as many watts as possible and focusing on the racing and all the parts of it that'll just make you unhappy.
You know, you guys have mentioned a little bit of the performance aspect of sport, and also like, you know, coming from non-sports backgrounds. Part of what makes this project super fun is that it isn't intended to be a brand. It's very naturally just an expression, you know, it's a little bit art project.
Mm-hmm.
Sports can be personal endeavors, it can be team, and it can be communal, and it can be activating. So like Warren, you asked about what the sport of tomorrow means. And I would ask the same to you. What is the sport of tomorrow? What is sports? You know, dancing is a sport, like cycling is a sport, pixel pushing is a sport. We're trying to replace, or at least enjoying replacing a brand name with a message that we think will make someone smile and hopefully think differently.
Is that why you have such like an active blog compared to most brands? Like a lot of brands have like a blog and then you go check it out and it's got like, you know, 2 things posted a year or something. Like yours seems pretty active, where you have,
Well,
We try. Daniel tries.
it's nowhere near where it's supposed to be. Let's say.
Yeah, there's so much story that we want to share. Actually, I have like 10 editorials from contributing artists. They're all incredible. I mean, our friend Enno in Germany, he produced these beautiful film pictures of the Swiss Alps last year and sent it to us with this really beautiful layout suggestion and a thesis. He says, in the Alps, they're raising a lot of cattle. There's really fertile soil. They have all this grass. It's really beautiful. But when you're riding there, it's very hard to find water. And isn't that weird? Because they're producing all of this milk, and the milk takes water to make. The cows need to drink a lot more water than a person would. You can go anywhere and get a glass of milk, but you can't get a glass of water. I see a lot of philosophy in that. So it's nice that you think we have an active journal. I can only think of the backlog of things that I haven't shared and how much more sense it would make if you saw his images of all these beautiful scenes with cows and no water anywhere.
the reason I brought out the blog is you're talking about creating this message, and I feel like that's sort of part of it, and you just seem to be a much more active in that idea of both communicating what BBUC is about, let's say, but also on that, it seems like you're also interested in how other people embrace it, because before we started recording, you mentioned how you had this listener survey where you asked for feedback, but you also have like a Discord, as far as I know, a kit brand, the only one who has one of those. I've actually been on there, but only creeping it. I haven't posted anything. I'm not a very,
like most people.
yeah, I know. Sorry, I'm not a very active Discord guy. But is the intention there to just like have a little community who really love BBUC, or is it just another forum for like getting your message across?
What we seek to do above all else is actually connect with each other and make space for people to connect with each other. We all met through the internet. They met through happenstance, Marvin and Christian. I met over like a friend mentioning he saw something that had real typography and it happened to be in cycling. And I thought, wait a second, that doesn't make sense. And whether you're physically next to someone or you're across the world, it's like when you're riding the bike, even if you're riding with someone who totally, like rubs you the wrong way, maybe they're a wheel sucker who's not polite enough to say, hey, mind if I sit on your wheel? Or something, or someone who doesn't smile and wave back. Beyond that, we're still people who chose to do the same thing at the same time. So actually, don't we have a ton in common? But our little societal wires are programmed some weird directions. And a cycling Discord is a little niche, so we're not trying to promote the brand there so much as give people a space outside of Instagram and typical channels where they can share their adventures, ask for some advice, talk about gear in an appropriate way, hopefully making space for, I don't know, real connection when your emotional guard is dropped on a ride. We'll see. It's an experiment. So far, it's quiet, but it's nice to hear that you're lurking around.
Yeah, it's Disco R&D. Discord.
Disco R&D, love that. So we've talked a fair bit about like what we find unique about sort of the messaging behind BBUC, but a thing that we've noticed and what stands out is sort of the graphics, a lot of the contrasting colors, because probably why you started the brand. Cycling kits can often resort to conservative color schemes or designs or borrow from the same earth tone color palette these days. We're curious to know like where you guys get your inspiration for the designs, the color choices, the graphics, whatever. Like, is it the disco or?
That's a question for the scientist.
Yeah, I think like it's very simple. It's the real world, and like people simply in cycling especially don't look outside the fence. So there's inspiration everywhere around the corner. It's everywhere, isn't it? Especially graphic design, anything can be an idea, and an idea can be visualized. So it starts with messaging, like it starts with something provocative. It starts with a headline on the news. God knows what it is. We are not shy to like take like turns to make people think. We also like to code things a lot. Fictional Nations concept, for example, is born out of like the hotel, like the idea like that a hotel is very similar to an airport, where like actually it doesn't matter where you're coming from. Everybody spends a night, 2 or 3 or a week there, and you all sit down at breakfast and like you eat, you're tired, you get your coffee in or not. Yeah, we think like we are all like beings on this planet, and like we reject the ideas like that somebody defined the border at some time. And this is what Fictional Nation is about. And like behind Fictional Nation is a grid where every single jersey is based on like, even if there's like a pattern visible or not, like the typography is always like kind of related to this. Some people know, some people see it, and if they don't see it actively, you like kind of feel it. So it's less about like branding it like with a logo every time. It's more like a whole visual language and the style in terms of colors and what we do there, repeating themes, reinterpreting themes and messaging to build this project and like plant seeds in people's heads to smile.
One thing that stood to me differently about the Fictional Nations concept as well that I've never seen any other kit makers do is you actually also designed some furniture to go along with the kit, right? There were stools that were created, I believe.
Oh yeah.
It was an Artex tool because one of the Petra and Artec managers is a cyclist, and he heard BBUC and Hotel and Brillantengrund over another podcast. Then he just came and visited, and he was totally into the idea and the philosophy of Fictional Nation. And he said, let's please make a Artex tool, which are really beautiful.
Yeah, from stools to the Giro, it has been everywhere.
Yeah.
Because we also have in every hotel room a Fictional Nation flag, like to really amplifies this national thinking or like mixed culture thing. Or everyone who works in the hotel, we have people from everywhere come working and guests, both like super mixed, everything.
It's a very special little place because we have so many different perspectives and backgrounds. It's not like crazy art hotel for elite people. It's for everyone. You have a really plugged in artistic clientele. You also have, just people passing by, travelers around Europe. You have, this morning, I'm sharing coffee with grannies as much as I'm sharing coffee with our artist friend from Miami. And this whole idea that we're all from somewhere is nice. We all have a background, but actually, like, where are we right now? Present here in this place, the common grounds, no passports.
I want to learn a bit more about the fictional nations concept. I'm wondering, when you guys are reimagining nations as an idea, are you trying to break down the notion of a nation as like a closed off insider group of people that are unified by a similar shared home, or is it an idea of re imagining how people associate with each other by like similar interests, hobbies, ideas, or things like that?
Yeah, it's an interesting way to think about it. On the one hand, we wouldn't want to exclude or let go of what makes us who we are. We have an inherited philosophy from our parents. We have an inherited history and background and way of thinking and genetics with our familial lines. But as we know, from science, you can trace that back far enough. And this
Right.
whole idea that someone actually drew a line in the sand defined it. So I think we try and draw a wider circle around interests. And one thing that disco speaks to, which is part of this fictional nations concept, is something that isn't cycling, that isn't niche, actually. It's really human. So imagining fictional places where we're all drawn together by something else, not where you're from, but maybe what you love, or maybe how you feel, something that's truly human and universal. Everybody feels joy and connection. And that's something that we can all share. It's much more inclusive.
For some reason, that just reminds me of Alex he showed up to a ride wearing some of your kit. I believe it's the Japan Camera Hunter collection. And the first time I saw him riding in it, I felt like I was like riding in like an anime cartoon just because of the design. Like it just really stood out. And like, yeah, it just for a moment kind of made me think it's like, oh, we're riding in this other like world. I mean, I don't know if I thought about it that deeply at the time, but now as you're explaining it, I am kind of thinking about it as it really did stand out as just like, this is not like the kind of thing I normally am riding alongside. I'll just say I felt like I was riding an anime, and Alex is so fast that he just rode away from me.
That's awesome.
It brings up an interesting point, though, and kind of where we want to take this discussion further, Warren, which is the kit really stood out when I was wearing it amongst our friends on one of our Friday group rides that we were doing. Like we kind of mentioned earlier, the color scheme and the branding and the wording really stood out from all the other kits that we typically see here in Toronto. Do you guys think it's important in designing new cycling kit for it to stand out and for each collection to be a completely different idea than the last one at BBUC, or do you try to maintain some continuity in designing your kits and some cohesion from one concept to the next?
I think it's not about standing out. It's like communicating something. Like society is brainwashed by the forever new. We try to break out of this with like not releasing too much, but we also have tons of ideas where we think this could be interesting for other people, and we try to get these out. It is less about fashion, more about the idea. Somehow we are just in this trap of like the fashion cycle, let's say. But Japan Camera Hunter is like a collaboration between like our friend Bellamy, who is running like Japan Camera Hunter, searching for cameras and like selling them online. Daniel bought like one of his analog cameras from him. At some point we noticed like, oh my God, like he's getting back into cycling. Let's do something together, because collaborating with like things outside of cycling and to promote these things is very interesting. We don't need to design like just another bicycle, another set of wheels, another kit. Like it's much more about like an idea where it comes from and promoting his business and like what he is doing in a very similar way, but like with cameras, like sourcing old cameras and repurposing, finding like a new owner for them to then go out, discover the outside world, take pictures, live in the moment, similar to a bicycle, especially shooting film. Like you're not like at 30 FPS, like burst mode with your DSLR. You're like taking a moment because every photo costs money. So this was like a very neutral, like kind of like collaboration that we did. And like, yeah, it's inspired by like Neo Tokyo and Neon Genesis, Evangelion, and all of these things. So this very futuristic type, and it was just lots of fun to riff on street pun and promoting Bellamy and his film. That is like where like the meaning is not more than street bread in the end. So the whole campaign has been shot at the Friends of Us bakery around the corner. There's an idea behind every shoot and every design, and like it's okay if you just like the colors, if you like the typography, but like it goes way deeper if you're interested in it.
Yeah, I think we wouldn't have fun just to put our BBUC letters on the chest. I mean, we are not wearing just Prada t-shirt, a white Prada t-shirt, or put Armani on my chest. This has no substance for us doing it that way. And maybe also that's why BBUC is like this kind of niche and only for the people who look into it a little bit deeper. Because, we just mentioned our different playgrounds, Fictional Nation, Disco, JCH. Yeah, now lately our unicorn jersey, which is actually the core jersey of the unicorn, the BBUC Brilliant Unicorn theme. And lately we were just joking. Actually, we are kind of a music label and have releasing 3 albums a year with Unicorn, Fictional Nation, Racing Dream. What else, Daniel, did we have? Happiness.
Happiness. We've got another chapter of Sporta tomorrow coming.
TOSOT is coming out now. Next one.
You know, Warren, you mentioned perhaps it was Italian Alex. You know, where is this coming from? There is continuity because it's all world building. Like it's all a total fantasy place, and from colors to messaging, it connects. You know, Marvin describes it as a playground because these are just themes that we can mess around with and try and speak some reality into the cycling bubble, especially from the outside world. And we're really a brand of contrast. You know, love it or hate it. We do plain jerseys where you can hardly see a logo because who wants to be promoting something on your chest, to totally neon Genesis fantasy in color about a black and white film. And what's crazy about that story, like Bellamy is just doing something hard. He's one of the only people in the world producing a black and white film as an independent company, and he isn't contracting it out. He is doing the work. There's 3 factories in the world who do this. And I think that's something that probably your audience can relate to. It's really nice to try and do something hard because you care about it. But we're not doing it the easy way. We're not just putting the 4 letters out there. I mean, our main logo looks like 3 letters. Nobody even knows that it's a UC.
A horseshoe.
Yeah.
Unicorn horseshoe.
We can definitely relate to doing things the hard way. That's what we do with this podcast. We don't make any money. We don't want to make money. So your brand has, it seems like it's grown a fair bit since you started it. Am I right in saying it's now available in some stores around the world, not just online, but it's available in some shops like around the world now? So we're just wondering, like, what's next for BBUC? Do you have set plans? Do you have any like future projects coming up that you want to talk about or anything like that? We're just curious what world you're headed to next.
Yeah, we have a small network of dealers from Bangkok to Montreal to Los Angeles.
Indonesia,
yeah. But it's mostly B2C, like directly packaged by hand by ourselves and like our friends here in Vienna. Things that are on the way, there are lots of themes. Like we celebrate Sport of Tomorrow and we celebrate 10 years of Racing Dream this year, which I'm like kind of finishing while we talk. Next year there's the Worlds in Zurich. Let's see. Last time was good fun. 2018 we threw a big party over there. Everybody was at our location somehow.
Well, we're going to stay tuned for all the projects you guys have in the future. We've loved everyone that's come so far, and I can't wait to see what comes next.
Yeah, thanks.
For every interview, we like to do rapid fire questions, which are just short question, short answer. And it's just, are you guys ready to do some rapid fire?
Yeah.
First question is tea or coffee?
Coffee.
Oh yeah, coffee.
Sure. Coffee.
What's the best coffee in Vienna?
I would say like Cafe Make around the corner.
Empress around the corner.
I would shout out people on caffeine here in Vienna as well. All three of those are our spots, so it's all good. Very, let's say, like on par with an Australian experience.
Centaurs or unicorns?
Unicorns.
Obviously, unicorns.
Road or gravel?
Both.
Road.
2 wheels.
2 wheels. We're very binary thinking. If you haven't noticed with these questions, we're very roady minded over here. Gears are fixed.
Gears.
Yeah, both.
Too old for fixed.
Carbon, steel, aluminum, or titanium?
Steel.
Carbon.
As long as it rolls.
White or black shoes?
I think we're all wearing white shoes, actually.
Like it's like kind of a, I don't know, head to toe kind of thing for BBUC for sure. The white socks and white shoes because like it's kind of light. They are turning all the time. You don't want to add weight.
I'm okay going back once in a while for yellow Mavic shoes like in the beginning.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah. We talk about white shoes being a staple, but it's fun to like mix it up. I have a pair of blue shoes because my this is navy blue, so I have like a pair of that. Do you have a favorite color kit? Because you guys got a lot of colors. Is there any favorites, or is it just whatever you're feeling that day?
Black.
Interesting.
Yeah, I don't know.
That is, I was not expecting that.
I think like we all like the colors that we design. It really like depends on the day, how you feel like. Is it like super hot and you wear just pure white? Or is it kind of black because you don't feel yourself yet? Or are you motivated for something funny and you wear some of our colors and actually some messaging?
Yeah, and one thing that was missing before is that like, it was also design focused because that sets us apart. But, we're developing our own fabrics with Scheller and doing all these crazy things and basics because to be silly like unicorn and also to be serious at the same time. And this is totally overlooked. So like wearing just a dyed black jersey, that's the nicest thing you've ever worn. It just feels good and puts a smile on your face. You can't do that when you're printing on top of it. It's a totally different direction in fabric. So I don't know. It's like, it really depends on how you feel.
I'm glad you brought that up, actually, because one thing, as an aesthetic focused podcast, we often, we sometimes like, I don't want to say glaze over the technical side, but we get kit and we just expect it to work, and then when it doesn't, you definitely, you notice. So just on that note, like even in the middle of this, is there anything else you wanted to say about like the technical aspects of your stuff? I know Alex was talking about, he really liked your kit and how it was performing. Is there anything else you wanted to add about that?
I mean, we have Scheller fabrics, as Daniel mentioned, and this is totally underrated nowadays. If something comes out with Gore or something, there's a big label on it, and they all hold up their flag, Gore. And yeah, actually, when we go to certain production companies and they look at our stuff, it's like, oh, you use Scheller. It's like, yeah, really, very posh. I mean, we made it primarily for us. And Scheller was just like always the fabric for bibs and especially our everyday everyone jersey. You just can see the difference from the quality. Of course, it's super expensive. I mean, when we were thinking about doing Scheller bibs, we thought, okay, what color shall we do? And then we thought about olive. And like the production company, the stores, like, why are you doing olive bibs? No one is buying olive bibs. And now look at the market, how many olive bibs exist out there.
Yeah, when was that, Marvin?
That was, I think, 2017 when I did the first lap dip. And now, I mean, I remember the big stores like, now we can't buy olive bibs. I mean, we only sell black bibs. And even the production company was like, okay, guys, do you have a kind of patent on olive colors? And no, seems like everyone has an olive bib now.
Yeah, I mean, Warren, like you mentioned, performance speaks for itself in terms of like, this is functional clothing. So it has to last, it has to stretch, it has to feel good. And actually there's a lot of nuance there, but hopefully nobody needs to have it explained, actually. Hopefully they put on their bibs, which we call dance bibs, and they feel like dancing. And that's we don't want to go deeper. Anybody can talk about technical BS, and to some extent, like, we should, because we're not telling the story. And like next year we have a revision of all of our everyday line with like lots of new details and stuff. It's slow and slow because we want to make things that really last, and we want to do things that really feel super good, because it's not cycling, like in the outside world of fashion, right? Earth tones, is this some invention? Wearing normal clothes? Like, are you and slowly pulling from that, whether it's in the graphic design or whatever, but having the fundamentals such that like you really feel good when you're wearing something, because you should go outside and be thinking about everything but gear the rest of your life, what's on your computer, your phone. For us, it's a lot of escape, and it's like escape clothing. It has to give you this functional fulfillment so that you can not think about it. We like the jerseys tight so your pockets aren't dingle dangling around back there.
Oh God, I know that pain all too
Yeah,
well.
I don't know. Like sometimes we have discussions of like, yeah, your jersey is too short. No, dude, like it's meant to be ridden. It's not for standing in front of a mirror. It is what it is.
Or
And
a
like,
selfie. Or
yeah.
a selfie.
And once people know this, and once they've ridden in it and they realize what it's supposed to do, then they mostly agree with us, and like we get tons of positive feedback back. But yeah, there can be a shocking moment putting on like a very tight jersey and being scared. But like, yeah, I mean, I even undersize everything just to have it even tighter.
Yeah, he's like 8 centimeters taller than me, and we're wearing the same size jersey. He just goes crazy, crazy tight. And when you're sitting on his wheel, which is easily one of the best in Vienna, because he's taking these massive long pulls through the flats and rollers, putting down super watts, only getting dropped by our pro friends. You can't see him because it's just his cute little tushy. He's folded himself into some tiny little thing, and you can't even see the jersey anyway.
Yeah, it's a team effort for sure.
I think you said it well. It's just you want to put it on, not think about it, and it's only when you don't think about it is when you really notice it. One last rapid fire question, which is just, where's the best place you've ridden, whether it's Vienna, somewhere else in Austria, anywhere in the world? Where's the best place you've ridden?
Tede is my favorite climb.
Yeah, I think I really like the rolling hills of Vienna. That's awesome. It's easy because it's around the corner.
We ask because we live in Toronto. It sucks for some.
Well, I mean, like you could be in LA and stop every 50 meters.
No, it's the same
Yeah,
thing.
the
here.
joke of LA sucks for cycling. I mean, I'm from LA. I ride bikes there. It does suck for cycling. It's a total fashion approach to sports out there. It's what you wear. And it's like so few people. Like there's crazy racers out there on Sundays and Saturdays doing some gnarly stuff. But as far as terrain goes, like, I mean, we have these totally beautiful climbs. You can do an hour plus. You could do a 3-hour climb. You could do a 4-hour climb. You can do 2,600 meters in one climb. And this is like really not experienced by a lot of people, because it takes some level of patience just to get out of the city in the first place. It's only a few kilometers, but it's a lot of stop signs.
One segment we do on the podcast ourselves, and we like to get from guests, is we call the segment Into the Canal. And what that means is, when we started the podcast, we would take things about the cycling world that we didn't like and throw them into Montreal's Lachine Canal. Alternatively, to celebrate the things we do like about cycling culture, clothing, whatever, we do what's called a Camilliens, which is a climb in Montreal. So we like to ask our guests if there's anything you want to give a canal to or give a Camilliens to, and it can be literally anything, even tangentially related to cycling.
Well, throw elitism into the canal, that's for sure.
Ciao.
And say hi to every other cyclist, which is very rare in Vienna. So the further you get out of it, the nicer the people.
Our other co-host, Tony, he actually has done that. He's thrown that canal, people not waving back. He's thrown that in the canal before, because that can be an issue in Toronto as well.
Remind me of what the positive one is. How do we say it?
Camilliens.
Camilliens. I would throw a Camilliens to teamwork, dreamwork, because cycling is a collaborative sport, and this is totally lost in group ride etiquette in a lot of cases. So maybe Canal, I would Canal gear talk and Canal solo efforts, like especially people like sprinting off the front randomly. You need to have some spice in your life for sure, and we like, we like to have some fun. But what's even more fun is when we can do a layup. If Christian tears it across to the beginning of the climb, I give the middle everything I got, and Coconut goes straight off the top. That's Marvin, by the way. Then it's even better. Like riding for someone else, you ride way deeper. You go totally inside out. So Camilliens to teamwork, yo.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, Canal. I would rather put into the Canal the competition, and to the Camilliens the contemplative.
That is all the questions we have for you guys today. And is there any final thoughts you want to add before we fully wrap it up?
Well, I could do a bit of business actually.
Yes.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
thank you
By all means.
thank you to you guys, or to you all, I should say. My apologies, and thank you to everybody listening. Of course, we're very happy to talk a little bit about the inside of what we're doing, and per podcast tradition, we'd like to offer your listeners 30% off. So I guess we'll get a link in the description, but it's cfw-unicorns plural for 30% off. We'd love to see some new people. We're packaging it by hand, and every once in a while we're all writing the thank you notes in there. So it's really it's much smaller than it might seem. It's something that is done for fun, and we hope that your audience enjoyed talking about something besides gear. They must not listen to many podcasts.
We're just so bad at the business side of things that we never really encourage brands to do that. So, on that note, actually, for our listeners, if you don't know BBUC, you can find them online at bbuc.co and on Instagram at bbuc_co. You just search BBUC, they'll come up. And if you don't already, I encourage you to follow them. They are a good follow. Their website is a pretty fun thing to check out. The journal, the projects, learn more about the hotel that they've talked about. As we said, we've really enjoyed seeing what they're doing with BBUC. So our listeners are always asking us for like different brands because a lot of them might be aware of sort of the larger players in the space, and we're excited to share more about BBUC with our audience. So Marvin, Daniel, Christian, thanks for coming on Cycling Fashion Week.
Thanks for having us. And come over to Vienna.
Yeah, we have a place for you.
Yeah, we have a place to stay.
All right.
Awesome. Yeah, end of summer, if it's starting to get cold in Toronto already, you just come on down, enjoy some sunshine.
Hey, what are you doing? I don't know, I'm just fucking tossing bikes in the river, bro.
Okay, next segment, into the canal. Listeners, you need to up your game. We have asked you to submit canals to us. You can submit your canal by letting us know what you want to throw into the canal. Send us a DM at Cycling Fashion Week on Instagram. Best way to do it. You can even send us the voice notes. Love getting the long kind of rambling messages. If they're good, we'll play them on the podcast. But yeah, please submit your canals or your Camilliens. Camilliens is if you want to identify something that you like from the world of cycling. A canal is something that you absolutely hate from the world of cycling. Who wants to start this week? Warren, go ahead.
I'm going to give a Camilliens to Standert's. I'm not going to elaborate why, because I think our discussion earlier in the podcast kind of explains that, but they're clearly doing a good job to not only motivate Tony to buy an expensive bike, but also to get Alex so riled up that he's like anti them now. All publicity is good publicity. So
they 100% deserve it.
Good job, people over there.
Tony, go ahead.
So I'm going to throw local bike shops, or I guess more importantly, the sentence, support your local bike shop, into the canal. Now, obviously a caveat, there's always some great shops out there. I'm not throwing every single one that exists, but you sort of see this, and obviously it's become this like proliferation after sort of the online boom of cycling retailers. Now I think it's even easier to buy a bike from them. And you know, a lot of people, especially shops, they want you to support them, support your local shops, shop local. Don't, you know, get suckered in by these big companies. But this is a punishment to the local bike shops that have been notoriously assholes to people for like decades. I'm sure it's every city, but I would say 90% of the shops in Toronto, almost anyone you talk to has had a bad experience, especially sort of pre-online stuff where they wouldn't help you. If you didn't have a big budget, they barely talk to you. They'd sort of scoff at stuff. If you didn't come in knowing exactly what you wanted and everything, it was just an awful experience. I mean, I have a million stories, but I'll tell one. So there's a shop, I think it's actually gone now. I think it's called Carrera or something. It used to be on College in Spadina in Toronto. And I went in, this is before YouTube, before online shopping and stuff. And I was trying to fix up a friend's dad's old steel road bike. And at the time, I didn't know what it had tubulars, but I didn't know what it was. I was too early on in my kind of cycling for it, but I knew they weren't clinchers. So I went in there, and I think I was getting a chain or something for my fixie at the time. And I was trying to figure out kind of what to do. And I was like asking the guy, and he just had no patience for me, right? I'm trying to get this kind of info. What do I need to buy? You know, I'm telling him about the rims. I haven't really seen this before, but I know it's not the same as this. No info. He's telling me, get to the point. He doesn't want to help. So in this day and age, why wouldn't I go on YouTube, learn how to glue tubulars, then go to an online retailer, buy tubulars and glue? If that was my case, I want to fix them. Why would I be all stressed out by some pompous asshole not giving me the time of day when I'm trying to give them business, whether they can convince me to bring it in to them to put the tubulars on or sell me the tubulars and the glue? Like, so you know what? Screw these people. Like honestly, like, and in the case of those that are still exist, step your game up. Step your customer service game up. Start caring about people. If someone comes in just looking to fix a flat, don't treat them like shit.
It's a hot take. It's obviously
lots to unpack.
I don't know if it is, because like you see debates like this a lot on the internet. Various things, people being like, "Oh yeah, who would agree, Tony?" And then people be like, "Well, I get great service here." And I think that's kind of the problem. Is service can vary so wildly, sometimes even at the same shop. I've experienced, like, I now have one shop I go to. Basically, it's owned by one guy. He's the mechanic. He's a great mechanic. It's like pretty much the only place I'll go, partly because he treats all his customers with respect. He gives you his opinion. If you want to do something different, he'll do what you ask, but he'll still tell you, here's what I think you should do, blah, blah, blah. But he isn't like condescending about it. Very knowledgeable. Shout out Liberty Cycling in Toronto. In my experience earlier on in my cycling journey, especially as a commuter, going to all these different shops, I never knew which shop to go to. And when I owned a commuter bike, you know, if I accidentally went into a roadie shop, God forbid, nobody's going to give me the time of day that I just want to buy some tubes. So that's true. But at the same time, I bought my very first road bike, CAD 10, from this like high-end road shop in a suburb of Toronto. And they were super nice, spent a lot of time with me explaining things in a non-condescending way. So I'm a little, and you know, I got my bike at a great price, like $1,100 or $1,200, I think. I do agree with you, Tony, is I think there's the art of customer service is lost on a lot of people generally, but especially at local bike shops. And I don't know what it is, because I've never worked at one. I think part of it is sometimes it's teenagers working there and they're either not getting trained properly or they just don't care. Or it's just people who, you know, it's people who really love cycling who opened a shop because they thought it would like let them ride their bike more and turn my passion into a business. And then they found out they never ride their bike now.
I think I got to disagree. Like, again, there's a caveat. There's always some good shops, like not, you know, hundreds of shops in the city or, you know, whatever. They're not all going to be bad, but like I just told you that story about one shop. I can name a story about when again, all very early on in cycling. So when I was trying to buy some new pedals, and then someone was trying to buy a new road bike, but with a very low budget. These are all three different shops that I was treated like garbage. Yeah. I just had questions. I wanted to know why stuff was good, why I should either spend more or spend less. No time of day, you know, just basically like, if you're just buy it or get out. And I think that like, they're not teenagers. These are always older, more experienced people that work there. The point is they're snobs. And guess what? This is what bothers me the most. When I started learning about cycling and knew in my obsessive way, and actually like, you know, the internet came out and I could read everything and knew everything about it, read all the releases of tech stuff and bikes and knew all the terminology and everything. Then I started getting treated really well when I could go in and say, hey, I'm looking for the Look Keo 2 carbon pedal. I need this or I need that, or I'm looking for these wheels or tires, or whatever. All of a sudden I got treated because I was part of their like club. And like that bothers me, right? Like, I mean, we are obviously very tongue in cheek and kind of the elitism of cycling and what you should wear. And we like the aesthetics and stuff. But part of it is that someone comes to me with awful style and says, hey, I heard you're the host of Cycling Fashion Week. What should I wear? Then I'm not going to say, well, if you don't know, I can't tell you, got to figure it out. It's the opposite. I'm going to be like, hey, here are these brands I think are really good. Like, make sure you're sizing right. That's what bothers me is these aren't just like teenagers working at some crappy retail store. These people like work full time there as their career. And they're basically, unless you can be as good as them, they they treat you like shit. And it bothers me a lot. This is actually one of my most passionate canals.
Yeah, but I think that if we go back to like the saying that we canal, it was support your like local bike shop, which means like not to get into the semantics, but it's like the one or two that you so choose to frequent. It's not support every local bike shop because every city, no matter how big or small, has like some good bike shops and some bike shops that are just so shit you wonder how they're still in business. So I think it's just like a matter of being a bit more discerning in where you choose to spend your money, right?
And just one quick thing, that's true. And as Warren shouted out Liberty, who we love, I will go to them and avoid online if I can get the part from Liberty. So I agree with you. If you find your local bike shop, do support it.
I think we're all a little bit hypocritical when it comes to supporting local bike shops when it comes to buying kit. Because I feel like for the most part, it can be quite difficult to find all the brands that we like to wear in store. And so we are kind of forced to go online for that stuff.
Though I do think Tony, I think he's speaking, in my mind, I'm thinking less about kit. And that's partly because a lot of bike shops just don't carry much kit other than like Pearl Izumi or something, or in my mind, I'm thinking more of like parts, bikes, that kind of thing. Like, to be honest, buy almost all of that in real life from my local shop. But yeah, you're right. We are because I will order stuff online if the opportunity.
But I think local bike shops are in a bit of a transition at the moment because I'll give you an analogy. To me, this is like the few years, or I guess, the 5 years after Uber completely disrupted the taxi market. You were looking at taxis before Uber appeared in North America and Europe. I guess in Europe, it probably wasn't quite as bad, but definitely in North America, a lot of taxis were providing awful service, but they were being protected by a fixed number of licenses. License values were going up. Cars were disgusting, were smelling awful. Some taxi drivers had terrible behavior overall. And then Uber arrived, shook up the market, which granted Uber has had some questionable tactics in some cases. But overall, now we're in a space where in 2023, a lot of the taxi markets have adapted. They're providing better services. They've got nicer cars. They've, take your credit card, which they didn't want to do before. And it's generally leveled up the service in taxis. And I feel like this might be a similar situation with local bike shops where those that didn't provide a good service are not going to make it pretty much. And those that do are going to make it, and they provide value add, they provide community, they provide advice, etc. And I think these local bike shops are going to thrive.
And I think that's exactly the point. And I mean, local in the sense of like what you use, but I'm talking about like there's a bike shop that's literally local, like blocks away from my house, my home. And I will not go there. They're just awful people, right? Like they're just terrible. And my point is like, I don't feel any guilt buying online in that case. Like it's not hypocritical because that's my whole point is like, why should I feel guilty about buying online or trying to fix it myself or whatever on YouTube as opposed to taking it in, which I think is just good in general. But like when I just don't want to be treated like shit because I'm not some expert or I don't have this huge budget or like whatever it is. So I'm saying like, I'm not hypocritical because my point is, go ahead, buy online, because exactly what Alex said about the taxi thing. If more of these shops can up their customer service game, where no matter who walks in with the smallest question or the buying just a tube or a fucking dust cap or something, and treats them with respect and tells them everything they need to know and spends a few minutes with them, then that maybe sort of change the game. Because notorious bike shops were about being jerks, and now that's kind of getting bit in the ass because I do not feel guilty about buying online.
Tony,
in
I think
cases.
you sell yourself short a little bit when you say you're not an expert. I mean, you've spent countless hours on sheldonbrown.com looking at gear ratios. You're a scholar of sheldonbrown.com.
That's true. That's the best GeoCities website that's ever been built.
Okay, all right. I'm going to move on with my canal because we could talk about the local bike shop issue for hours. So my canal this week, I think, is a bit of an unusual one, not something that we talk about very often, but with the return of nice weather in the northern hemisphere, I have witnessed a phenomenon that, again, is not super common, but it has happened to me recently on a ride in Montreal. I was riding slowly on the bike path to get to Camilliens, the most difficult climb in the world, where I was going to do a few laps, but I had to get on the bike path to get there. And I'm always very respectful, very cautious on the bike path. But what I am going to Canal this week is rollerbladers on a bike path. Now, very early 1990s type situation, rollerbladers. So you may ask, are there still a lot of rollerbladers where you live? The answer is no. There's only a few. But the problem with rollerbladers on a bike path is that they have such wide movements when they're pushing their rollerblades. They take such wide strokes that it's literally impossible for them to stay in their lane. And as a cyclist going opposite a rollerblader, it can be very nerve-wracking, especially if the rollerblader is more than 6'2" or has long limbs. And yeah, just go somewhere else. Don't be on the bike path. I don't really care for rollerblading. I remember in the early 1990s, roller hockey was a thing in Canada. This stuff is over. Like, rollerblading is not coming back. And please don't do it on the bike path when I'm there with my bike.
I'm going to agree with you. I don't think I need to go any deeper, but this is always just like a thought I had because like the French are supposed to be the sort of like the most stylish and the coolest people on earth, right? Just effortless beauty in everything they do. Their streets, their fashion, their shout out Thibaut Pinot and the one of the most panache in the current peloton. But they have rollerblade cops. Like, why does or Paris at least? I don't know if the rest of France has it, but like, I just always think about that when I see a rollerblader because it just looks so stupid. It's such a lame thing to do. It's not as efficient as a bike. You can't go as fast. You might as well ride your bike if you want to do that or go for a run. There's just so many other options for your like fitness or transport or whatever you want to do. But then I just think I'm such a Francophile. It's just fondness for the French. And then I just think about their Parisian rollerblade cops and think, what the hell are they doing?
So to get away from the cops, you just have to run onto grass.
Yeah, exactly.
Or go downstairs. Or
into the metro and they're just screwed.
Yeah, it's not. I don't think you can not look ridiculous on rollerblades. But anyway, look, you do you. Just don't do it on the bike path.
Last but not least, I'm going to do a Camilliens for this week. And this is kind of an unusual one. I feel like I've been seeing it more and more in my Discover page and For You page. And right now, it's a phenomenon that is specific to the gravel world. But I do wonder if in the upcoming years it's going to spread and become a trend in road aesthetics as well. And I'm going to give a Camilliens to colored tires.
Oh.
Now, this was a trend in like the 90s and 2000s that died very hard in that era. I remember pro bikes having red tires and green tires, and it's very much a product of that specific time. And then it died hard and tires went black. And then slowly the cream and tan sidewalls had a bit of a resurgence, and now they're like a mainstay in product offerings from all the major tire manufacturers. And now, and I think it started with Panaracer. Like, I think the Gravel Kings were kind of like the first big tire to offer this, but I've been seeing more tires in like different colors. Like, I've been seeing it in like a baby blue and like mint green and even orange. And I know this is very subjective, but I just love how they look. I think it really adequately captures like the fun vibe of gravel. And if you have the right colored bike, it can match really well. And I think it just looks really fun. And I really like how it looks. It's kind of jarring when you're not used to it. And sometimes the colors aren't complementary. They're kind of clashing, but there's just something about it that I really liked. And I kind of missed. And I don't know if it's just that it's something different and that's why I like it so much, or if it's like Y2K era nostalgia, but I am kind of hoping for a colored tire renaissance. And I'm looking at all the other hosts foam at the mouth to respond to me. So
I muted him. Tony, go ahead.
This is just more proof that gravel bikes are just 90s mountain bikes. Like that's what it was in the 90s, right? Those sort of color tires. I always remember kind of like a teal was very popular and stuff. And I mean, there was also the road stuff and the fixie shit, but like essentially, like it's just like they're just evolving into 90s mountain bikes. Like I'm just waiting for, I mean, they've already put some of them already have like this, 3mm suspension and stuff. Just wait till they get those flat bars coming out with the bull horns and they're telling you that's the new thing. No, Alex, no. I'm canaling. I'm doing a second canal and I'm canaling colored tires.
Alex, I'm not angry. I'm just disappointed.
I tend to want to agree with you in canaling them, although I did have red tires in the early 2000s. But I just want to say that if Standert comes out in your Discover page with colored tires with their peach frame, I think you morons would be all over it very quickly.
Come in and just Camilliens the new standard colored tire.
Standard makes them,
with.
they're okay.
Yeah.
I would just like to point out that if the colored tire makes a comeback, like we are kind of in the fashion world, typically trends have a 20-year cycle, right? So things that were popular in say 2003 are going to come back into style now in the clothing space. And I feel like cycling kit isn't that far off in the cycles of how trends work for that as well. If colored tires make a comeback on road bikes, I get the right to say I told you so.
I actually think Alex is right. I wouldn't be surprised if that thing came back. My reason for believing that isn't the 20-year cycle, but just if you look at how Gen Z is dressing today with the sort of late 90s, early 2000s kind of baggy look a little bit, I wouldn't be surprised if colored tires were the next logical conclusion to draw from this. Not that I approve it. I disapprove of colored tires, but I just think it's quite possible that they may blow up in the next few years. Okay, that's it for another episode of Cycling Fashion Week. Thank you, Warren. Thank you, Tony, the return of Tony, the hot takes. Thank you, Italian Alex. Grazie mille. Thank you to Daniel, Marvin, and Christian from Brilliant Unicorn, BBUC. And as they mentioned on the interview, don't forget, they're giving a special discount code for our special Cycling Fashion Week listeners. Consider yourselves very lucky. Go to the BBUC website, and the code is CFW-unicorns, plural. CFW-unicorns. You get a 30% off discount for Cycling Fashion Week listeners only. Don't tell us that we don't bring value to you. You get 30% off. Very nice cycling kit. Again, thank us later. That's it. We'll be back in a few weeks. In the meantime, don't forget to send us your Canal submissions at our Instagram via direct message at Cycling Fashion Week. That's it, folks. We're out. See you in a couple of weeks. Bye-bye.
Don't forget your Spandex Sunday submissions also.